Hi everyone. Uh, Thanks very much for coming. Welcome to the meeting, the MCA board meeting of the 12th of November 2024. So we will kick straight off. Thank you to members of the public for attending as well. Agenda item number 1 is simply the welcome and apologies. Do we have any apologies to the meeting?
Yes, so we received apologies from Councillor Sir Steve Horton, from Sharon Kemp and from Tom Belsfield.
Thank you very much. And we will move straight on to item number 2, which is just the chair's announcements. And I do have a few, I'm afraid, so I'm just going to take a moment just to reflect on what's happened since we last met. On Wednesday, the 23rd of October, we launched our bus franchising consultation. And the good news is that within 24 hours, we had 735 responses. That compares with, I think I'm right in saying, 1,400 responses in the West Yorkshire region in the whole of the 12-week consultation period. So getting up to kind of half of that number in South Yorkshire in the first 24 hours, which is a really good thing. Since then, though, the numbers have continued to build, and as of last week, 2,878 respondents have given us their views on franchising. So that is really positive. Anybody who is watching this, I would strongly recommend filling in the bus franchising consultation, please. All statutory consultees have been contacted, and we are offering one-to-one meetings with anyone who wants one. Hard copies of the consultation have been sent to every library in South Yorkshire, as well as posters and public information booklets that have been made available throughout South Yorkshire as well, so that people who are digitally excluded are not disadvantaged and are able to get involved, because we want to hear from every single part of our community. We've got a comprehensive strategic communications, marketing and engagement campaign to encourage as many people excuse me, from South Yorkshire's communities to have their say. The consultation is being advertised on the backs of buses, on our local radio stations, in local papers, on social media, on bus shelters, on digital billboards, via a public information booklet drop to a fifth of our households across South Yorkshire. So we're doing everything apart from sending me out with a sandwich board. So this is good news, and I think that's why we're getting such high numbers. Also running public information drop-in events across the region, so anyone who has more questions or who needs assistance on completing the questionnaire can get the help that they need in order to take part in the consultation. And we'll be working with our colleges and universities to encourage younger people to take part as well. As well as that, we're running focus groups to capture qualitative information from specific groups such as people with disabilities, older people, younger people, women and girls, etc., which I think is really a positive thing. So I'm really grateful to everyone around the table, all the councils obviously, for their support in promoting the consultation and encouraging so many people to have their say. As I say, I think it's going really well. The consultation closes on the 15th of January. There's still a while to go. The only thing I would say, and this is a broader reflection, is just that whilst the statutory consultees are our councils, our trade unions and other bodies, the statutory consultees don't include the public, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring the public into this consultation in such a impressive way, and the numbers are great, so that's really positive. Faith and community leaders meeting. Yesterday I convened a second meeting with our faith and community leaders following the disorder that we saw over the summer, particularly in Manvers, but frankly across South Yorkshire. I just wanted to update people on the current figures around convictions and arrests, which I know I've been asked about on a number of occasions. So far, 89 people have been charged. 78 of those 89 people pled guilty or have been convicted. 71 of those 78 have been sentenced, and a combined total of 155 years worth of prison sentences have been handed down. I'd like to reiterate my thanks to South Yorkshire Police for the way that they've handled the situation, the wider criminal justice system and the courts for the speed at which they've dealt with those involved in that disorder. I said at the first meeting with faith and community leaders that I wanted to continue the dialogue we had in the wake of that disorder and develop those stronger working relationships, which is why those meetings will now become a regular thing. Over the 30 faith and community leaders joined me yesterday and told me what they'd like to see in the police and crime plan, which was really important to me, and I'll be publishing that obviously early next year. We had discussions about hate crime, community cohesion and feelings of safety, and that was a really positive meeting, and I want to engage with that group over the wider agenda that we run here. I just want to reflect briefly on that disorder that we saw in South Yorkshire and what's happened since. I know we've seen the tragic suicide of a man in prison, and I think this just reminds me that nobody wins from this. No, absolutely nobody wins. Nobody in our communities has won from what we have seen, and we need to find ways to bring our communities together. I think everyone around this table agrees on that, because that violent disorder was horrible to watch for everybody concerned, but we just need to make sure that we are bringing our communities together across this region. I know everybody around this table is committed to that, but it is a body of work that we need to carry on with. I want to just remind people of the Olympic, Paralympic, Special Olympics civic event that we held, and thank you for those that were able to make it to that event, because last Friday that was a brilliant thing to see, a civic reception to celebrate South Yorkshire's sporting success following the Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games and the 2023 Berlin Special Olympic Games. I know you all, like me, have enormous pride in our Olympians, Special Olympians, Paralympians, and I think it was important to recognise their success. We've planted a number of trees on behalf of those people who won medals at the Olympic Legacy Park as well. There were hundreds of guests who attended the event on Friday, including athletes who are either from or train in South Yorkshire, and I was pleased to be joined by the Minister for Sport, Media, Civil Society and Youth, Stephanie Peacock, one of our local MPs. We have a huge amount of homegrown talent, don't we, in the region, and we need to make sure that we carry on supporting that talent and celebrating their success. So it was a really good event. So again, thank you for those that attended. On trees, continuing the theme, we didn't just plant those 17 trees, we're also now relaunching the Free Trees for Community scheme, and we're issuing a call for landowners, businesses and others with access to land to get in touch with ideas for planting. So please do amplify that message if you can. On Workwell, last week I officially launched the brand new Workwell service that South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority is now delivering across South Yorkshire in partnership with the Department for Work and Pensions and South Yorkshire Housing Association, which builds on the Working Win scheme that we've seen in South Yorkshire to such great effect. The scheme offers free, personalised and intensive support to help people with health conditions or disabilities to find and succeed in work. That is available for people who've been unemployed for 3 months or less or are already in work. It's a really good scheme. This is another one of our new and innovative approaches to improving health and economic outcomes across South Yorkshire by supporting those furthest from work into meaningful employment. And I hope will just be part of the offer that we can then sit alongside the Pathways to Work Commission, which we're having positive discussions about with government, and we're hoping to have some news about in the not too distant future. And then last but not least, it is worth just mentioning the BBC's commitment and their contribution to the apprenticeship levy. The BBC have announced £100,000 contribution to South Yorkshire's apprenticeship levy to fund apprenticeships for those who want to work in the creative and digital industries. And I know that you'll all support the work that will happen as a result of that to develop those sectors in our economy and support jobs and opportunities so that everyone in South Yorkshire can stay near and go far. So thank you for indulging me as I just reflected on some of the things that have happened since we last met. On to agenda item number 3, please, which is urgent items. Are there any urgent items for anyone? Nope. Okay, thank you. Item number 4, items to be considered in the absence of public and press. I don't believe there are any exempt items on the agenda. Item number 5, declarations of interest by individual members in relation to any item of business on the agenda. Does anybody have any declarations of interest, Ross?
We have, but it's wider South Yorkshire as well.
Yeah, it's the broader things that the standing items. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Item number 6, reports from and questions by members. None have been received in advance of the meeting. Does anyone want to throw a curveball in at the last minute? No, thank you. Item number 7, receipt of petitions. None have been received. Item number 8, public questions. None have been received. Item number 9, minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of September 2024. Are members content that the minutes are an accurate record of that meeting? Yes. Okay, we'll take those as read. Thank you very much. In which case, on to item number 10, please, which is the government autumn budget implications. That is an item that's going to be led by Andy Gates. The paper provides a short summary of the implications of the autumn budget, which was handled by Rachel Reeves, as you'll know. Andy, do you want to talk us through that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So I won't take you through line by line the paper, but just to signal that the budget presented on the 30th of October was just a one-year bridging budget, really taking the government and us into a longer-term, multi-year spending review that the government expect to conclude in spring 2025, which is kind of the big prize in terms of understanding what the government's longer-term approach to funding activity is. But this one-year budget did provide really important clarity on a number of funds of particular importance to Simca in South Yorkshire, and I'll come on to those. It also confirmed that South Yorkshire, the Mayoral Combined Authority, will receive an integrated settlement from 26-27 onwards, You'll have heard this called a single pot, a single settlement, but that is a consolidation of national funds coming into the Mayoral Combined Authority. The breadth and depth of that is still to be determined. The quantums of that is still to be determined, but it's something that many of you have argued long for. So it was really positive. The MCA was also confirmed as going to be in the future being part of the local government finance settlement, which reflects the importance of putting MCAs on a sustainable long-term financial footing. So that was captured in the budget. On transport, the big chunky things that the board should be aware of, government confirmed £1 billion of investment to fund BSIPs, bus service improvement plans. Detail of that is to be determined, but South Yorkshire would expect to secure an allocation of those resources, which is positive. Government signalled that they are increasing the fare cap to £3, but also extending it to December 2025. CRSTS allocations, this is the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement. Allocations were confirmed nationally for the next financial year, but nothing confirmed for 26-27 onwards yet. And the budget indicated that BSOG, which is the Bus Services Operator Grant, which is funds that currently go direct from the DFT to operators, bus operators, are expected to be wrapped up into the integrated settlement from 26-27 onwards. And just to remind board members that that was part of the level 4 devolution deal commitment that we secured in March 2024. Just on economic growth, there were concerns about Shared Prosperity Fund and its continuation. The government have confirmed another year of that, described as a transition. It is unclear yet a transition to what, but it also took a significant haircut of 38%. So I suspect things will come forward to this board for consideration about how that will work in the future. And we're also anxious about investment zone funds. So we'd secured, we knew we had funds in this year. No certainty until the budget for any investment zone funds into the future, but the budget confirmed that there will be a year 2 settlement, and the government also announced a number of new investment zones. So that may signal their sort of longer term intention around investment zones. Just on housing really quickly, the Affordable Homes Programme was given a £500 million boost, and the government signalled their intention to put £3.4 billion into a warm homes plan. Details in terms of how that's done to come through. On skills and employment, wasn't a huge amount in there, but the big commitment where we think there's South Yorkshire relevance was the £240 million commitment to fund 16 economic inactivity focused pilots, and the paper hints that that may be the source of supporting the Pathways to Work programme. And then just last but not least, the government also committed to putting a historic wrong right by ensuring that those mine workers in receipt of a mine workers pension would have the 1.5 billion that had been sat transferred into that pension pretty much with immediate effect, and that's expected to increase mine workers pensions by 32% across the board. And that's it from me.
Well, thank you, Andy. I think it's worth saying no budget is perfect, right? There's always winners and losers in any budget, but I think there was some really significant good news for South Yorkshire, not least the single settlement, which is a big step forward for this region, this organisation. I think we come back to this theme a lot, don't we, about the deepening devolution in South Yorkshire. I think it's another step on that journey, and it's testament to how far we've come, that we're now in that place. Tram funding, confirmation, like Andy says, of the IZ in the near future. But there are also some broader wins, things like the minimum wage increase, which will impact on a number of people across South Yorkshire, investment in the NHS, which will obviously go a long way to helping people in South Yorkshire. So some broader themes as well as some others that are more targeted at South Yorkshire. I just wanted to reflect on a couple of things specifically there as well, which is just the £3 bus fare, which it's worth remembering was not going to be confirmed by the previous government. They had not confirmed that they were going to bring forward the bus fare cap in any way. So a bus fare cap of any description is welcome news, albeit obviously we want fares to be as cheap as possible in South Yorkshire. But I think it's also important to remind people that that is not a maximum fare, or sorry, that is not a minimum fare for buses in South Yorkshire. Not every journey is £3. A lot of bus journeys in South Yorkshire will continue to be under £3, and I think it's important that people know that and remember that, because some of the messaging around this has been quite difficult. I think people might have got it in their heads that that means that every bus journey in South Yorkshire is now going to be £3, and it's not going to be. £3 is very much the maximum, and I think that's a really important point. So I would like it if people could try and take that away and remember that. And then last but not least, just to kind of again touch on the mine workers pension scheme, there are up to 18,000 people in South Yorkshire that are going to benefit from that uplift, and that is huge. And it's huge both in terms of the economics, it's huge in terms of what money that means for money in people's pockets, but it's also huge because it's an injustice that's sat there for far too long. And this government have finally gripped that and solved that problem. And there are other injustices that this government are going to have to get to grips with. I've mentioned before about Orgreave and what we need to do there. And I'm fully supportive of the campaigners who say that they want to see an inquiry into Orgreave. But what we do need to see is that those injustices are gripped, absolutely. And this is a very good start, very welcome, and particularly for those 18,000 people, but broadly for a place with the heritage and history that South Yorkshire has for this region in general. So really, really good news. Is there anybody else that wants to comment on the budget? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Say your name just so other people
right.
online.
Caroline Makinson, Barnsley. Yeah, the budget, there's quite a few things that we're awaiting the detail of for the combined authority. I would like to suggest maybe we could have a special meeting to look at the budget and what it means to the combined authority, maybe early in the new year, so we can see as leaders, sit round the table and talk about the specifics of what we've been allocated. Thank you.
So we're intending to have an MCA meeting in January anyway, I believe. So we can add it to the agenda and make sure that we do have that on the agenda once we know a bit more about what those details mean. So that's a good idea. We'll definitely do that. Anybody else want to comment on the budget? Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Andy. That was great. Can I just say then, we just need to note the key funding decisions set out in the Chancellor's 30th of October budget and consider the implications of those funding decisions as they relate to the MCA's ability to deliver on agreed objectives. Number 2, note the government's commitment for South Yorkshire to be one of 6 MCAs to have an integrated settlement deal in place from 2026-27 onwards. Happy? Brilliant. Thank you very much. On to item number 11 then, please, which is South Yorkshire Airport City, full business case. And that will be presented by Gareth. The paper highlights the work that has taken place on South Yorkshire Airport City and identifies the next steps to continue that process. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. The board will record that since 2022 and the closure of the airport, this authority, along with colleagues in Doncaster, along with other stakeholders across the region and the country, have worked to re-establish aviation at Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Of late, that has coalesced around the concept for South Yorkshire Airport City, a reopened airport providing the anchor for a sustainable aviation hub at Gateway East, putting Doncaster and the region at the forefront of the next industrial revolution, building on sectoral strengths across the region and recognising the location already of notable businesses within this region such as Rolls-Royce, Boeing, McLaren and hybrid air vehicles. So over the calendar year, there has been a twin-track approach to progressing activity. That's largely focused on the preparation of a business case, which if approved could release gain share funding to support the proposition, and the undertaking of a comprehensive procurement exercise that was designed to return a credible operator to run the airport along with private investment. So the full business case is now largely completed and has been received by the MCA. There are still a number of pieces to be worked upon, but we have subjected what we have received to our assurance processes. The procurement process itself is almost complete as well, subject to a number of issues that are still requiring conclusion. However, that procurement process has returned a preferred bidder partnered with a credible international airport operator. The full business case identifies the significant opportunity for the region through this project. The business case describes 5,000 direct jobs that could potentially be achieved, 6,500 indirect jobs, gross value added uplift for the region of 6.6 billion and a benefit cost ratio of 9.1. This underscores the really quite significant opportunity that is on the table through this project. The project has the potential to have a transformative impact, not just on Doncaster, but across the rest of the region, and provide catalytic opportunity through its coalescing with the investment zone, of which Gateway East is an opportunity site. The business case, however, does highlight the significant risks involved in this project. Some of these are well known and were outlined at the outline business case stage, relate to issues such as patronage and commercial growth, recapturing the market share of the airport. Some, however, relate to the emerging shape of the commercial deal that is still to be concluded, and this reflects the likelihood that greater public investment will be required over that initially envisaged. That public investment will be required to facilitate the creation of market conditions to allow for further private investment into the future. The level of investment required probably requires a greater level of public control than initially envisaged, and that is to ensure that we have the right level of control to protect the investment, making sure that we have all the tools in the toolbox required to look after the use of public funding. This control and investment is likely to require colleagues in Doncaster to submit to the Subsidy Advice Unit the proposed levels of public support. So this report proposes a number of issues. We propose to afford more time to Doncaster to conclude the commercial negotiations, to strike the right deal and protect the level of public investment that is likely required. We also ask the board to endorse the submission by Doncaster to the Subsidy Advice Unit. And further, we asked the board to approve an award of £3 million of further grants for necessary activity that is required to facilitate necessary infrastructure investment and to support accreditation with the Civil Aviation Authority. Now, all this is required to keep us on a critical path that could see the potential reopening of the airport and commercial flights by spring 2026. This will further allow us to revert to the board in January 2025 once the receipt of the Subsidy Advice Unit is received and the business case has been completed, representing and reflecting the final commercial negotiations. So I'm happy to propose this to the board, Mayor, and take any questions.
Would anyone like to make any comments? Ross, can I bring you in, please?
Yes, of course. I'm delighted that we're one stage further and we've got the potential of spring 26 to see commercial flights going from there. Of course, we'll have to ensure that we comply with government regulations, but I'm delighted to see that we can see the start of the catalyst for the great economic growth an airport will bring not only to Doncaster but to the region as a whole and wider.
Anybody else like to make any comments? Yes, please, Karen.
Caroline Makins. I'd like to echo the things that were said by Gareth in the report about the growth, the capacity for growth that this brings to the region. And I'd like to fully support the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the officers that have been working so hard behind the scenes. I think it's clear that I remain fully committed to reopening DSA and creating a world-leading sustainable aviation hub at Gateway East, and that's always been the case. But I do want to speak directly, I think, to those people who've been campaigning so diligently and so hard for the reopening of DSA. And there are some people in that campaign I know who have always wanted to do a deal at any cost. And frankly, that is not, I think, where we are. That has never been the sensible approach, because actually the sensible approach is to do this deal properly and do the deal absolutely as quickly as we can, but to make sure that we're getting that deal right, to give DSA the best possible future, the most sustainable future going forward, and the biggest and best chance to succeed. And that is where we all want to be, I know. And that is about both giving Doncaster and South Yorkshire our airport back, that is about protecting the future of DSA, that is about creating that world-leading sustainable aviation hub at Gateway East, and it is also about protecting taxpayers' money, taxpayers across South Yorkshire. So all of those things are equally as important, and I think we all recognise that, and that's why this deal is so important and why we're taking our time to get it right, absolutely and fundamentally. So I'm grateful for the report and the work that's gone into it. Is everybody agreed that we take this forward? Let me just read out the recommendations. One, please that we note the significant strategic and economic opportunity offered by the South Yorkshire Airport City proposal. 2, approve the award to CDC of additional development funding of up to £3 million from existing earmarked resources to progress time-critical reinstatement activity and to continue commercial negotiations. Number 3, endorse the submission by CDC to the Subsidy Advice Unit of a referral noting the potential need for public subsidy of circa £105 million. 4, note the intent of CDC to continue commercial negotiations with the aim of bringing a final report to the board following the conclusion of that negotiation and the receipt of advice from the Subsidy Advice Unit in January 2025. Are we all agreed? Wonderful, perfect. Thank you, everybody. On to item number 12, please, which is the biannual growth update. That is from Kate Mearsk and Joseph Quinn. Dream team. Over to you.
Great, thank you. Can everybody see the slides? Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Mary, and good afternoon, everybody. We provided a short pack in the MCA board pack with an economic update. So just before we have Joseph's update, we will just bring out a few slides of interest from that. So I'm going to start with the forward-looking economic and fiscal outlook, which the Office for Budget Responsibility produced alongside the recent budget. So I'm going to focus in that on the economic outlook. So starting here, excellent, you can see it, great. So starting here, essentially the economic and fiscal position hasn't changed much since March, but this budget does deliver a big increase in spending and tax and borrowing, as I'm sure you will have all seen. In terms of GDP growth, you can see from the chart on the left-hand side here, GDP growth is forecast to pick up a little bit. Compared to the March forecast, growth is forecast a little higher this year and next, which is down to stronger GDP and real wage growth recently, and also the net fiscal loosening in the budget. This is temporary, so growth is then forecast to be weaker between 2026 and 2028. Going to briefly move on to talk about the inflation picture. So inflation has fallen back to around the 2% target. It's forecast to pick up a little in 2025, and that's in part due to the impact of budget measures, but then return again to the target. The latest from the Bank of England last week, which is not in the slides, is that inflation is now 1.7%. And the Bank of England say that the decision to reduce the base rate to 4.75% reflects the continued progress in disinflation, and also that monetary policy will need to remain restrictive for long enough until the risks to inflation returning sustainably to the 2% target in the medium term have dissipated further. So that was a very quick look at the forward-looking position, but I'll now just turn to the latest data that we have on the economy for the UK and for South Yorkshire. Coming back to growth again, so our most recent data shows a small increase in GDP across the UK to June, and that's consistent with what you just saw from the OBR. That was mainly driven by growth in the services sector, with small reductions in output in the production and construction sectors. Turning now to the picture on unemployment. So unemployment in South Yorkshire itself, which is the dark blue line on the screen. That's similar to UK-wide unemployment for the last year. The headline really on unemployment is that this is low in the UK and it's low for South Yorkshire. So 3.5% for South Yorkshire is historically it's low for the region. But of course, as we know, one of the big issues for the South Yorkshire labour market is around economic inactivity. So our economic inactivity continues on an upward trend. It's currently 25.6%. Which is 4.1% above the UK rate. And in terms of reasons for that, long-term sickness really remains the main reason for that inactivity. So around a third of inactive people state long-term sickness as their primary reason. Finally then, just moving very briefly onwards, around jobs and business confidence. So this slide looks at advertised vacancies. And what you can see is that both in South Yorkshire and then the next slide, in the UK and then the next slide on South Yorkshire, you can see there's been a downward trend in advertised vacancies, both temporary and permanent. And analysts and recruitment consultants are suggesting that's due to some uncertainty around the economic outlook in the budget, because this was produced before the recent budget. That's South Yorkshire picture. And then finally, in terms of business confidence, so confidence continues to be in South Yorkshire net positive on profitability, on plans for investment in training and plants and machinery, again, net positive. This fieldwork was done to mid-September, so we can take a look at how this is going to change going forward. Hand over to Joseph in that case.
Thank you. This report is presented for information to the board, and it covers high value support that's currently in delivery across the region. I won't run into too much detail on all of this, but I'll just touch on what's covered. So there is performance information on Made Smarter programme, which targets productivity improvements in the manufacturing base, and it sets out the performance of 3 programmes from within the UK SPF funding envelope, which includes Launchpad, productivity and low carbon. As Andy mentioned earlier, this has now been confirmed for an additional year at a reduced rate. It also covers the Growth Hub, which funds a suite of specialist business advisors across the region and provides some online provision, and covers our Skills Bank programme, which provides support to business for very specific training intervention. On top of that, we're also covering in here the South Yorkshire Innovation Programme, which will look at innovation adoption in our foundational sector and beyond, and also covers Tech SY, which is targeting development of our digital and tech ecosystem. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kate, Joseph. Any questions, Kate or Joseph, on any of that? No? Got away with it. Thank you both. Appreciate that. So could I ask that the board note the economic update presented by Kate Misk and note the ongoing activity to support growth in the region presented by Joseph. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So agenda item number 13 is Strategic Place Partnership Business Plan with Homes England. That's going to be presented by Colin. The paper provides an update on progress with the work of the SPP board and seeks endorsement of the business plan, which sets out the key aims and objectives. Colin, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I would say the Strategic Place Partnership with Homes England was established to enable us to work more collaboratively, both at the regional and sub-regional level with Homes England, particularly with a key aim to try and secure greater investment and funding within South Yorkshire for to support our housing growth and regeneration ambitions. The SPP board met for the first time in September. That was chaired by the South Yorkshire Mayor, but also included our Housing and Infrastructure Portfolio Lead, Mayor Ros Jones, and also a Homes England board member as well. A key item that the board considered at the first meeting was the business plan, and this is the document that is set out in Appendix A. The business plan sets out the terms of reference for the SPP board, the new ways of collaborative working that we're going to work with Homes England and our local authorities and other partners, and our ambitions and opportunities to deliver our desired housing and regeneration outcomes. The business plan set out in the report has kind of 3 key objectives, which are essentially to develop a robust housing pipeline of schemes, building on the good work that Sheffield has done in terms of developing its pipeline, and we've also developed a further pipeline with the other authority areas in Doncaster, Barnsley and Rotherham. So we've got a kind of a region-wide pipeline now, robust pipeline. And this is developing potentially up to 32,000 homes, which we are now going into the next stage of developing further, looking at the barriers to development and also the interventions needed to deliver them. A second objective is about increasing affordable housing, and that's through not only our housing associations, but also increasing the local authority house building programmes as well. And we are in a good place with the South Yorkshire Housing Partnership, with all our active housing associations within them, but also our local authorities are 4 stockholding authorities. And over the last recent years, they've all been really punching above their weight in terms of delivery. And so we're in a really good opportunity to scale up affordable housing across South Yorkshire. And the third key objective is about delivering area-based transformation. And this is particularly through housing-led regeneration of our catalyst sites and areas within the region. One such is Furness and Neeps End, Furness Hill and Neeps End in Sheffield, where recently Homes England have announced £67 million to support the new housing and regeneration of the area. So the recommendations, Chair, are to welcome the establishment of the South Yorkshire Strategic Place Partnership and the progress made in delivering the housing pipeline, and also to endorse the Strategic Place Partnership business plan.
Thank you. Brill. Thanks, Colin. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Tom?
Yeah, thank you. I do welcome this. I think, as you mentioned, Colin, we've been working with a really strong partnership with Homes England in Sheffield for a number of years now, and Furnace Hill and Neep's End that you mentioned received £67 million of investment earlier this year. Just last week, the tender document was issued for us to go out and find a development partner to bring forward a brand new neighbourhood on brownfield land in the centre of our city with space for 1,300 new homes. That's one of 3 new catalyst neighbourhoods that we're working on developing with them, but there are now a number of different work streams that we've been engaged with at a city level with Homes England, and I think the support that they've been able to provide us, and I'm sure this will be replicated across South Yorkshire, is to wrap their multifunctional team around our team to give us greater capacity to be able to provide the upgrade in quality and quantity of homes that we need in our city and across the region. So I do welcome this, and I think it's a good step forward for our region.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Caroline.
Yeah, I'd like to also welcome this and to say they've only met for the first time in September as well. Thank everybody for the work, and Barnsley looks forward to working with Homes England and crystallising our plans and the support that they can bring with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. I just want to put on record actually just my thanks to Peter Freeman and Peter Denton, who I know are moving on from Homes England, just to say how well they've worked with South Yorkshire and supported the work that we've been trying to do through the SPP. So thank you to them, and then a warm South Yorkshire welcome to Eamon Boylan, who has been appointed as Chief Executive of Homes England. So we'll look forward to working with him as well. So could I ask that the board welcome the establishment of the South Yorkshire Strategic Place Partnership and the progress made on developing a regional housing pipeline, and number 2, endorse the Strategic Place Partnership business plan. We all agreed? Yeah. Thank you. On to item number 14, please, which is the Fair Cap strategy, and this will be presented by Melanie.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a relatively short transport report. So DfT have been funding a £2 bus fare cap nationally, and it is due to run out at the end of December, and as we've heard, the government have now said that will increase to £3 as a fare cap. Now, the MCA board took a decision to also look at fare caps for trams and introduced that. The current tram fare cap is £2.80 for a single journey. We are proposing that we extend it from the end of November, when it's due to end, to the end of December, just to bring it in line with the bus fare cap. And we're also proposing that we bring a further report back to discuss the implications of the £3 fare cap that's been introduced.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Melanie? Yes, please.
Can I just say the fare caps have been very helpful, but we've got many areas that are not actually able to utilise this because the bus services have been desecrated across the whole of South Yorkshire, but very much so in Doncaster, being one of the largest areas in the country to have to cover. And when I'm seeing bus service reduced to an hour from Ascot into Doncaster, it is not good enough. So what we're doing is seeing a downward trend, and therefore what we're going to see is people falling off utilising public transport as is, because 1 hour is just not acceptable.
Thank you, Ross. Any other comments or questions? Well, add my comments first, and then maybe you can just respond, Melanie, which is just to say, I think what we're living through is the consequences of 14 years of decisions which have done so much damage to our public transport system, and particularly the funding decisions around BSIP, where South Yorkshire, as we all know around the table, was so badly treated. We asked for in excess of £500 million for our BSIP bid and received not a single penny, and that has had a material consequence for bus services in South Yorkshire. And now we're in a place where we have to make a decision about whether people should have buses at all or cheaper fares, and frankly there's no point having a cheaper fare if you can't get a bus, as you say so rightly. The cost, I think I'm right in saying, of keeping the bus fare cap per annum in South Yorkshire alone, were we to fund that ourselves, would be in excess of £11 million, and we simply do not have that type of money in South Yorkshire. And if we did have that type of money, I know that a lot of places would want, rather than cheaper fares, to have better bus services, and so we always have to make that balance work for us in this region, and it's not a position we want to be in. It's hopefully a position we're going to be able to get out of at some point soon, but that is where we are right now. Melanie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just to say that BSIP, the Bus Service Improvement Plan, we will receive some BSIP funding for next year, Government have confirmed that in their budget statement. We just don't know how much that will be at the moment, but we absolutely need to invest in our bus services.
Which speaks to the point earlier about bringing this back in January and maybe having a wider discussion once we know some of those numbers. So I think that's quite right. Okay, unless there are any other comments, could I just ask that the board agree to extending the current tram £2.80 long distance single fare cap until the end of December 24 to align with the current end date of the £2 bus fare cap at a cost of around £35,000. Have we all agreed? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Okay, on to item number 15, please, which is the quarterly budget revision 2 and Treasury Management update report from Gareth.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the cyclical half-yearly updates on our financial performance. Just a couple of things to update you on. The capital programme and the revenue budget are largely on track at this point. We are seeing, however, some pressures emerging, particularly around the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme. That's the elderly and disabled passes. Two issues there. One, the reimbursement rate has gone up above forecast, and the second is that cohort is travelling more than they have previously. So that's creating a multi-year financial pressure that we're keeping under review at this point in time. We have, however, got better performance on the tram than we forecast, so that is necessitating a lower degree of public subsidies. So that is good news. That's down to increased revenue generation and cost control, so good news there. Finally, just wrap up by saying we've got much better performance on our income generation, and that's largely from the money we generate from holding cash on deposit, and that's due to the higher interest rates. So we're maintaining a watch and brief over that. We're proposing through this report to move that money through to reserves pending the information we receive on what level of transport funding that we get out of the budget, as Melanie has just referred to, and that should enable us to take a more informed decision on how to use that money when we're in full sight of the budget implications for South Yorkshire. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any comments, please?
Just a quick question, really. Can I assume that once we know you've got 10 million now gone into reserves from Treasury Management, can we assume that the spend of that will be coming back to this board for the allocations, or I know some of the mayoral priorities, they'll be coming back as well for approval?
Yeah, absolutely. All investment decisions are subject to board approval.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks, Gareth. Can I therefore ask that the board approve the revised budget estimates of financial year 24-25 and approve the transfer to reserves? Agreed? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, on to item number 16, please, which is the audited statement of accounts for 22-23, and again from Gareth.
Thank you. This is a simple report asking for delegation for the approval of the 22-23 accounts to be given to the Mayor and myself following consultation with the Audit Standards and Risk Committee. This reflects that the accounts are likely to be the subject of a disclaimer from the external auditor. This position that a number of councils around the table will be in, and this represents the failure of the external audit market over recent years. So the accounts were published in line with the statutory timeline. They've been open for public inspection. They've been available for audit, but unfortunately the auditors have not been able to get to them before the backstop date that is in February of this year. So we're now in receipt of the disclaimer. It arrived today. The Mayor and myself will review that. Audit Standards and Risk Committee will subject it to scrutiny, but then subject to the delegation, we'll close that down and move on. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Any comments or questions for Gareth? Does anyone want to give him a hard time? No? Okay. Can we ask that the board therefore grant delegated authority to the Mayor and the Exec Director Resources and Investment to finalise and approve the 2022-23 accounts of both SIMCA and SYPTE once both sets of accounts have been subject to the final consideration by ASRC and the audit has been concluded. All agreed? Thank you. Me too. On to item number 17, please, which is therefore Gateway Review, which is both Gareth and Lindsay Whittaker. Thank you.
I think it's me. So, good afternoon, everyone. Earlier this year at the June board meeting, we presented our approach to the national evaluation of devolution funds known as Gainshare and the Gateway Review. We also presented the emerging findings from the midterm review at that point. The paper presented today provides an update as we near the end of the Gateway Review process, which has been a fairly lengthy one and a fairly intensive one for us here in South Yorkshire. The paper also provides the findings and the recommendations from the academic panel that considered our evidence papers and a draft final review report from the national evaluators. Overall, the panel noted that we had made reasonable progress with the investment of gain share schemes. A number of recommendations have been made, specifically around the monitoring of and monitoring data for revenue schemes in particular. This is all detailed at paragraph 2.2 in the paper. The Gateway Review will officially end with a challenge session with senior officers here and with MHCLG in the new year, but the paper is presented to you with the findings so far.
Kathy, do you want to add anything?
I think just to say this represents good news. Devolution always needs to be earned. We are subject to independent review on the use of our funding, our devolved funding. The report is clear that we've made good progress in this regard, so grateful to officers within the MCA and across the region for how they've engaged with the process.
Thank you. I think I'd just add to that if it weren't for pieces of work like this and the success that we're seeing here, we wouldn't be in line for the single settlement. It is because of types of work like this that we are able to prove to the government that we are in a place to be able to make that step, and I think that's really welcome. So thank you for all the work that's gone into it. Really appreciate it. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, in which case can I ask that the MCA board notes the feedback received from the national evaluators of the Gateway Review and 2, considers how the findings and recommendations from the final evaluation should be implemented in preparation for the next phase of devolution. We all agreed? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, on to agenda item number 18. Oh no, sorry, I've done that one twice. Sorry, let me try that one again. Recommendations as in the paper. Thanks. Sorry everyone. Have I done that right? No, I've done that wrong. Programme approvals. Laurie,
hi.
over to you. Oh,
Good afternoon,
thank
everyone.
you.
Hi. Yeah, this is the usual programme approval report, which seeks approval to invest in a number of schemes. I'll just break them down from the report. The details are all in there. The 2 schemes seeking full approval following assessment of business justification cases. There's one in Barnsley, which is the Town Centre to Oakwell Active Travel Scheme, which is a £2 million scheme funded by Barnsley's allocation of the Mayor's Sustainable Transport Fund. And then there's another scheme in Doncaster, which is a brownfield housing scheme, and that's by Fenwood Estates, called Gateway East, and that's a £270,000 investment. Further scheme, the Sheffield City Centre to Atcliffe and Darnall Transforming Cities Fund project is seeking an in-principle approval at outline business case, and that's a £23.86 million investment for walking, wheeling, cycling and bus priority measures between Darnall, Atcliffe and the town centre. The report also asks for delegated authority to the head of paid service in consultation with the portfolio lead for 3 schemes that are partway through the assessment process. They're almost there, but they weren't quite ready for this meeting. So there's a brownfield housing fund project in Rotherham called the Rotherham Priority Housing Site Scheme, and that would be seeking an in-principle approval that outline business case for £1.65 million of grant funding. And then there are 2 schemes in Sheffield. Firstly, at Stocksbridge, the Manchester Road Community Hub and Placemaking Project, which would be seeking an in-principle approval outline business case for £3 million investment, and that's part of the Sheffield Gain Share programme. The second scheme in Sheffield is a brownfield housing scheme, and that's a Newstead General Needs project, which is part of the council's stock increase programme, and that will be seeking approval of up to £1.31 million. In terms of grant acceptance, there are 2 in the report. So firstly, the report seeks to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Growth, Business and Skills in consultation with the portfolio lead for an acceptance of £230,000 of grant funding from Department of Work and Pensions, and that's for the Care Advocates programme, and also to approve entering into legal agreements with the local authorities to distribute those funds. And then there's a smaller one, which is to accept a £60,000 grant from the Tees Valley Combined Authority for local capacity support for the North Eastern Yorkshire Net Zero Hub. And then finally, the report seeks the approval of one change request, which is for a Sheffield scheme, the Kelham Active Travel Public Transport Scheme, which is seeking an additional £1.2 million from the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, and that's due to cost increases related to some on-site challenges. So that's it.
Thank you. Sorry, Laurie, I was so excited about the programme approvals it threw me. Apologies. Anybody want to comment on programme approvals? Tom?
Yeah, I can do that. I'm very, very excited about these programme approvals. The Attercliff Downall scheme that is highlighted here is a really big step forward for our plans to regenerate Attercliff. Just last week, I was on site with Situ, where they're at Attercliff Waterside. They're in the process of just beginning work to build 1,000 new homes, the first significant house building in scale in Attercliff for many years, and the investment that is outlined here to upgrade the walk-in cycle routes and public transport improvements in the area will make a massive difference to make sure that Attercliff is a great place to live and work. And I think the other schemes that were mentioned for Sheffield give an indication of the range of regeneration that's taking place across the city right now. In Stocksbridge, the plan to build a new community hub, an adult education hub alongside the library, and then also the plan at Newstead to build new council homes, 77 much needed new council homes, which later this month will be beginning on site as well. So I really welcome this and grateful for colleagues' support.
Probably worth saying thank you to Marie Tidball for her support for those projects as well in Stocksbridge. And just on the point around the Attercliff and Darnall improvements, I know sometimes some people, and I get this on the radio show when I go and do my Call Copard radio phone in, and people call up sometimes, they're a bit negative sometimes about some places across South Yorkshire, and particularly when it comes to Sheffield. I like to point out, if you were to walk down from the university through the innovation spine into the new heart of the city development, go and have a look at what's happening in Kelham Island, West Bar, out through to Attercliff, see the site clearance out there, out to the Olympic Legacy Park, out into around the AMRC and into Rotherham, you would just get a whole new perspective on what's going on in South Yorkshire and how exciting that is. And I know that's a work in progress, of course it is, but it's a significant work in progress that is already paying dividends. And I think people just need to recognise that these things are moving and moving at pace, and they're moving at scale, and it's down to local leadership from you guys, but hopefully also this organisation as well. But it's really exciting, and I'm really pleased to see it all coming together. So thank you for all your support. Any other comments or questions on any of that? No? Okay, in which case, this report seeks the progression of the 6 investment schemes subject to conditions set out in the assurance summaries, with 1 change request, 1 grant acceptance and 1 retrospective approval for a funding submission, acceptance of any subsequent grant awards. The recommendation is simply that we accept the paper. We all happy? Wonderful, thank you very much. Okay, in which case on to item number 19 please, which is the delegated authority report, the highlight of every meeting. Martin, could I hand over to you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Very straightforward report. Regular report that we bring to MCA board, setting out delegated authority decisions and actions from September through to the end of October. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, could I just ask that the board note the decisions and delegations made? Which brings us to the close of the meeting, unless there is any other business. No? Okay, in which case, thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you at the next meeting.